Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here and I'm back with another video for honeybee stamps. Today we're going to be making a card with actually lots of die cuts. So I still did a scene, but I just did it a little differently than I normally would. So I'm going to be using the cloud borders, the Sunburst Coverplate, and the Seasonal Sweeties stamp set. I also used the Hill Borders honey cut die as well. I'm going to be doing some distress inking for my background. I'm just marking where that cover plate is going to be so I know how far down I need to go with my inking. And I picked Distress Oxides for this. They give just kind of like a softer look. And I'm going to color her and her little puppy dog pal here with Copics. And so I wanted the background to be a little bit softer. The way that the cover plate's designed, the sun's in that top right-hand corner. So I wanted that part to be, like the circular part to be lighter. So I used Squeeze Lemonade there, and then I added some fossilized amber around that portion of it. And finally, I think the last one I used was Spiced Marmalade. And this was just to get some like variation in the sun rays, because you're not really going to be able to see this whole thing. Like, straight up, I knew that when I was going into it, but it's kind of setting the scene for what I want my card to be. So I did add it to the bottom. I always do my inking twice. If you watch my videos, you know, once I get out to my darkest color, I always go back through. It's kind of just like my tried and true method with everything. For this, I did want there to be a little bit of like a rain look, or a very like, I guess I wanted the little droplets. So I'm using just clean water, and I'm sprinkling that on with a number 2 round brush. And then of course the Perfect Pearls for some shimmer, because all cards should have shimmer on them. All of them, all the cards. And so I wanted my clouds to be darker. So I didn't think that doing this particular technique on the clouds would work. But I thought that it would be for like the sunlight to have those kind of little spatters of lighter color. Speaking of the clouds, I am going to, if you were doing a card where you wanted them all to be, I guess you wanted it to be the full card, don't do the way that I'm doing it. I knew I was going to stack them up, and I only wanted it to be a portion of my card. So I'm starting with a Salty Ocean, and I'm letting it fade to white at the top. So much more heavy-handed on the bottom, letting it fade to white at the top. I'm using Salty Ocean, Faded Jeans, and Blueprint Sketch. Well, switch those last two because I used the Faded Jeans as my darkest color. But anywho, that's just the way that I did it, because I wanted it to look kind of like a storm was receding. That was just kind of the way that I pictured it in my head. And I think we all, when we're, you know, you sit down to make a card and this design, you have an idea of the way it's going to be in your head. Now, for me, it almost is never that way. Like in real life, it never comes out that way, because I just kind of roll with the punches as necessary. But this one actually did come out pretty much the way I had pictured it. So here I'm going through and I'm going to put down the cloud dies. Again, I knew I wasn't looking for a full panel, so I could cut each one of them out of one panel. But if you want something that's going to be covering like your whole card, you don't want to have to smush your little clouds together, then do ink separate panels. Don't just do it all on one, because once I cut these through, I'm only going to have little tiny sections, which you'll see. I forgot to give them something to stand on, so I have to go back, and this is how the Hills borders came into play. I was like building this whole scene, but they had no ground to stand on. So for that, I'm using Twisted Citron, and then I'm adding just a little bit of shading with the Lucky Clover. Tim Holtz keeps coming out with these Distress Oxides, and I'm waiting patiently for the Mowed Lawn one. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm living. I love Mowed Lawn. I think it's a beautiful color. And so hopefully next time around, Tim, not that you're watching my videos, Tim, but if you were, Tim, I would tell you, Mowed Lawn, please. And that, again, I just let that one kind of fade to white as well. I wanted it to be a lighter edge, as if the hill they were standing on was kind of catching the sunlight. So something unique about these border dies, you can cut them apart or you can leave them together. If you leave them together, it adds kind of this fun stitched detail at the top. And so I've left mine together because I wanted it to mimic that, that stitch detailing that I'm going to have in my clouds. in order to put this whole thing together, now, remember, I'm not, I want to put her in front, but I don't want her to have a dye. I want her to look like she's part of the scene. So I'm going to temporarily adhere this Sunburst. I keep wanting to call it a starburst. It's clearly a sun, Kelly. But this Sunburst in the background so that I can start putting my parts back together like a puzzle. So I want those pieces to be glued to the background. And I want to be able to remove the template from around it. So Tombow Mono Multi Glue dries repositionable, and so that's why I'm able to do that. And I can just, pick them up and put them back together. This cover plate's really easy because even though there's 9 or 10 pieces, they're all pretty substantial size pieces. So I'm not chasing anything around my desk or anything like that. You guys know how I feel about that. The fiddly stuff is not for me. But this actually came together really easily. So putting those all back in together, I toyed around with which one I wanted to use, if I wanted to use the positive or the negative. I ended up using the negative portion of it, but I ended up using the positive. I always mix them up. But the negative portion of it is beautiful, and I'll probably use that on another card. So I'm just going to pick that up, and then I'm going to put this into my MISTI to start with some stamping. So I'm basically just going to lay out all of my clouds where I want them to be. You can see how tiny these strips are. You can't, on the bottom, it doesn't go all the way down, but it doesn't matter because the hill is going to cover it up. And the reason that I did that was to get placement for my stamp. And I'm going to stamp this down because I'm not using the dies. So I need to find a way to make that umbrella, the handle for the umbrella, which is just one line, even throughout, because I need it to look fluid so it doesn't, it doesn't look weird or like the lines don't match up. So I'm stamping her down once, and then I'm going to glue in my first cloud. And then I'm going to stamp her again. So it will continue that line from the umbrella. And then this is just a personal preference thing. It isn't necessary, but I really like stamping my images down, even if I'm not going one layer, because then whatever I cut out, whether it's fussy cut or die cut or what have you, I don't know any other options, so I don't know what have you would be, but you're following where I'm going. I like being able to kind of put them in place over where I've stamped. So, because sometimes you have some little finicky bits, like in this case, her hand is a little tiny and wobbly. So this way I will always know where everything goes because I stamped everything down and I can match up that fussy cut image with what I already have stamped down. So I kept stamping all the way through, even to the hill, but also because of his umbrella. He has an umbrella in his hand as well, and so I need that line on my grass. This one, I just kind of laid in place temporarily. You'll see like me smush the glue around, wait for it to dry, because I knew I wanted to pop it up on some foam tape. So I'm just tapping that with my fingers and rubbing it on my hand to make sure that it's not too sticky before I put it down. And then I'm going to stamp it just one last time to get the placement for that. And then basically the stamping portion is done. I did stamp her on a second piece already, on just a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock, because I'm going to do Copic coloring. So, yeah, so I have just been so busy these last 2 weeks. I've just been crazy busy. Time management has not been on my side. I actually shot this video at the end of April. I shot this video at the end of April. And if you follow me on Instagram, which you're more than welcome to go do, it's my username is D as in David, IS as in Sam, P as in Paul, 6194. It's an abbreviation for dispatcher 6194, because that's what I do. And that's, so yeah, anyway, if you follow on Instagram. you saw in my stories, I actually posted a picture and I had to watch this video before I could voice it over because it was so long since I colored it. I couldn't even remember the names of the products that I used. Like, that's legit. That's real life. But I mean, I still think that it's super cute. I'm sorry that I didn't get it up sooner. I share videos and people sometimes will comment on this. They're like, haven't I seen this video somewhere? And I do share videos that I make on other people's channels, on my own channel. This being an example of one. Because we don't all have the same subscriber base. So some people that follow Honeybee Stamps don't necessarily follow my own personal blog and vice versa. So if you ever think that you've seen a video somewhere and then I posted on my channel as well, you're probably right. You probably did see it somewhere. Her hair is pretty well detailed out. It's got a lot of lines in it. So I'm really just adding kind of minimal shading to that. Like in this particular instance, adding any sort of flicking or texture isn't going to be beneficial or really even noticeable, honestly, because of all the line work that's already in her hair. I don't know. This image, I think, was, well, the whole set, seasonal, what is it? See, I told you I can't remember the name. Seasonal Sweeties. I'm terrible. Has also like an autumn image in it with some leaves. So I don't know if all of it was intended to be for autumn, but I thought, you know, with her little trench coat and umbrella, for sure I could use her for spring. I'm just a little late to the game getting it up there. But all of you out there doing your own thing, lives, you know, I'm momming, I'm working, I'm card making, I'm volunteering, I'm doing 100 different things. So please forgive please forgive me for how long it took me to get this up. So her hair being done, again, like I said, just, you know, minimal kind of shading. And then I'm going to move on to her little trench coat. And I wanted her to be relatively brightly colored. First of all, just because I love bright colors, that just makes me happy. But also because I wanted her to kind of stand out from that background. And so I thought red would be a great play with the blue and the yellow in the background. So I've already kind of got a primary color thing going on. For her, I'm doing my light source as if it was more of a center highlight. So as if the light was standing directly in front of her. Technically, the way that the card is, she should be backlit. There should be backlighting. So she should be dark. And that way it would look like the sun was coming from behind her. I'm taking some creative liberties because she's far too cute to just put into shadows. Sometimes I do that, you know, the backlighting technique. And if I do it, it's because I feel like that's the best way for that card to look. In her case, and her little cutie pie puppy dog's case, I did not think it was the best way for this card to look. So I just ignored it. And that's totally fine. You don't ever have to use a light source or be completely accurate when doing your coloring. It's still going to be pretty. Don't sweat that stuff. Like just roll with whatever you think is going to be the best look for your card. So for her shading, I'm adding it a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. There's going to be some shading where her arm is kind of tucked into her body, where her hand's in her pocket. There's also going to be some shading where that trench coat lies on top of itself. So with the buttons on top, the shading would then be to the left. Just going through and doing that, adding that shading so that she's nicely, brightly colored. I just love bright colors. And I really wanted to do that umbrella rainbow. I don't know what to make. I can't get away from rainbows. I just love them so much. They make me so happy. My son's birthday was just a few days ago, and we're amping up for party time for my son's birthday. And when I was in the party supply store, they just had like a wall of like paper products, like napkins, cups, plates, all that stuff. And it was in rainbow order. And I was like, oh, you are making me so happy. You're making my little heart go pitter patter right now, because I just love a rainbow. Do you guys have like a favorite color combo? I love rainbows. Anytime I can work a rainbow into a card, I'm all about that. Speaking of rainbows, we're going to move on to the coloring of the umbrella. So the way that I did the coloring of the umbrella is I added shading coming down from the top and a little bit of shading up from the bottom. This is a round object, so in order for it to look round, the highlight is going to be kind of across that middle, and it'll be rounded out to make sense with the umbrella. I'm not going to show you every color. I'm just going to show you one or two here so you can kind of get the idea of the technique that I used. I will show you every color combination though. I know a lot of times people will ask like, what's your favorite color combo? Or do you have a page on your blog for your favorite color combination? And honestly, I don't. I feel like there's so many out there, and ultimately it's going to be what you like, what you're into. I will tell you, when I started my Copic collection, you've probably heard this story before, but I tell so many stories on this channel that I cannot even remember if you have heard the story before. See, that's the non-benefit to doing voiceovers, because in real life, like if we were just sitting here having crafty chats as friends, you would be like, Kelly, I know. And then I would stop talking. But since I don't know if you know, I'm going to keep talking. But when I picked my color combination, Jennifer McGuire had her list out, and I knew that I liked her style. I knew we both liked bright colors, and so her list was the list that I used to kind of start my collection. And there's still a lot of colors that I use from that, but there's a lot I've added to it as well. So that would be my recommendation. Like, find a Copic person, and when people ask me, I usually refer them to Jennifer's list because that's where I started. But find whoever it is that uses a color palette or a color scheme, an intensity of color that you really love, and then follow that. So here I am using some gray markers, and I'm going to do her scarf. And this is one of the ways I'm going to make it a little bit more springy. And I apologize because I don't know what I was doing. After I colored her scarf white, then I apparently forgot to I paused it, and I forgot to restart it when I did the actual detail on her scarf. So that is my bad. I also used the gray markers to add some shading up underneath that umbrella so that it would look like one piece would look inside, and one piece would look like it was on top. So anytime you're shading anything white, you're just adding the shadows. So that's all I'm really adding here. I'm not stressing out about getting it completely perfect. I'm just adding some lines basically where there already are lines, and then leaving some white areas. The way that I did her detail on her scarf is that I just took a blue marker, which was one of the blues. Why can't I talk? One of the blues that I used in the umbrella, and I just did like 3 little dots next to each other. And then next to that, I did like a little flick of green so that it would look like it was like a blue and green flowered scarf. That's what I wanted, to make it look a little bit more springtime versus a little bit more fall. I'm using the same colors I used for her hair, for her little doggy here, just because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to pull out more brown markers. It also, design-wise, it does give your card some continuity and all of that. But I'm just really, at the end of the day, my main reasoning is that I didn't want to have to dig out more markers and then link more markers. That's the reality. Back to the color picking. So I usually do refer people to Jennifer's list, and that would be my recommendation. Like, find somebody that you like, that you know you're going to use that color palette. Not that you like the way they color. That doesn't matter. That you like the colors that they use in their cards, and that will help you to select the Copic colors that will work for you. Speaking of buying Copic markers, please, 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 with a cherry on top, do not buy one of those sets. Don't do it. No, stay away. Don't buy like the 72-piece set. The beauty of Copics is that they blend together. That's the main thing. You want them, the reason that Copics are different than Sharpies is because they have this color family and this ability to blend with each other that is kind of seamless. So buying those sets is of no benefit to you because you can't, it's like one blue, one red, one purple, one orange, one yellow, you get what I'm saying. Those aren't going to blend together. That's not, and then people get frustrated and they don't understand why they don't like their Copic coloring, and it's because they haven't approached it properly. So they do have like 3 family color blends, those kinds of sets. Those are probably great. I didn't start that way, but those are probably great. I would recommend getting about 3 colors that you will blend together. So now all the Copic's coloring is done. I'm going to outline my images with a EK6S journaling pen. This is Copic safe in case I need to go back there and make any kind of touch-ups. But if you know that you're done coloring, you don't need something that's Copic safe. These just happen to work for me. Once it's all done, I'm going to fussy cut it out. The reason I chose to fussy cut it is, like I said in the beginning, I wanted it to be fluid. I wanted her to be part of the scene versus sitting on top of it with this like white border. I am going to cut my pieces apart. So like I'm going to leave the umbrella attached to her, the little orange umbrella attached to her because that makes sense. But I'm going to cut the dog and the other umbrella out separately because they don't actually touch. And it would just make my job more difficult trying to keep them together on the same piece of paper. So I trim them down to something smaller before I start fussy cutting. I keep my scissors straight in my right hand, and then I turn my paper with my left. That's how I roll. I can't remember if I showed you or not, but after I'm done fussy cutting, I'm going to use a Memento Tuxedo black marker to just go over the outline. So that way, any kind of jagged edges or something that wasn't so smooth is a little bit masked by that black line. And clearly I did not show you because here we are moving on to the sentiment. So this is just black Simon Says Stamp cardstock. I've lined up my sentiment. I knew that I was going to cut them out into little labels, so it doesn't really matter how they fit on there as long as I can get a good clean cut for each word. I treated my paper with my anti-static tool. I'm going to stamp down in Versamark ink. And then I'm going to go ahead and heat set that with white embossing powder. These are the first time I used these stamps, so I did stamp them twice just to make sure I got a good impression. And that Sunny is pretty thick. The line weight on it is pretty thick, so I wanted to make sure I definitely got a good impression on that. Back to the picking of the Copic. So the smaller sets are probably good. The bigger sets, please don't buy. It's a gigantic waste of your money. And then if you buy multiples of them, I think you actually get repeats. So I would start with a 3-color blend, a light, a medium, and a dark of whatever color that it is. And I would start with whatever you color the most. So for me, I color flowers the most. So that's where I started. I started with my bright colors. For somebody who does critters, I'd start with the E family. You know, get those browns, maybe some grays, things like that. I'm a big proponent of the grays. I know that they're not super fun, but they are super functional. So that would be just my very quick recommendation in a nutshell. I'm going to add some white gel pen. I added some to her eyes, also to the little dog's umbrella. I made it a little bit polka dotted so it had something fun going on. And then that is the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope one of these techniques will be something that you want to try, and I hope that Copic information was helpful for you. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.